Hawaii is one of the remotest places found upon the planet, but yet humanity has found a way to not only discover it, but to find a foothold and thrive. It's just what we do. And once we have established a proper footing within a new territory, we will start playing games as a means of not only passing the time, but to also have some fun. And across the various Hawaiian Islands, boards of varying sizes have been found connected with a single game, so let's take a look at it. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming Checkers. With this episode, we will be going over Konane. With Konane, it is an old strategy board game originating from Hawaii, with Westerners coming across it when Captain Cook made contact with the native Hawaiians in the 18th century. When it was originally played, the board was known as the papamu, and it was carved into that of rock or stone, where small depressions known as pukas were carved into them. With the pieces, they were made out of obsidian, coral, seashells, and/or pebbles, which have the possibility of being smoothed out. And papamu have been found possessing different shapes, sizes, and even weights, with some of these papamu possessing over 100 pukas found on them. But as time progressed, the pieces were replaced with pegs or marbles, and the board replaced with something more suitable for modern day, also known as Hawaiian checkers or Hawaiian drafts, as well as being described as a two-player version of peg solitaire. Konane was a popular game in Hawaiian history, as seen with the fact that several boards have been found around the Hawaiian Islands, which is underscored by the fact that grand tournaments were held in order to find the best Konane players of Hawaii. But with that said, the game was almost completely lost to time after the initial European encounter. But since it was recorded in a few books, the game survived into modern times. When playing Konane, it is done between two players who sit across from each other with a rectangular board that possesses an even number of spaces placed between them. And though the game can be played upon any sized checkered board, ranging from as small as a 4x5 board all the way up to a 14x17 board, a 10x10 board can be seen as the standard size. But as long as the board possesses an even number of squares, it doesn't matter what the board's size is. But with all of that said, the size of the board will alter the difficulty level as well as how long it will take to play. When it comes to that of the pieces, they're divided into light and dark colors, with the total number of pieces used taking up every square of the board. On top of this, each player is to receive an equal number of pieces. So on a 10x10 board, each player is to receive 50 pieces in their respective color. When setting up for the game, the pieces are to be placed onto every square of the board in a checkerboard pattern, where one color is placed onto the light-colored squares, while the other color is placed onto the dark-colored squares, thus matching the desired game size. So think of it as each diagonal roll consisting of the same color. From there, the players are to decide who will be using which set of colored pieces. This is typically done by having one player pick up one piece of each color into their hand, followed by placing both hands behind their back, where they are to shuffle the pieces. Once the shuffling process is done, they're to place one piece into each hand, followed by presenting both hands in a closed position to their opponent, who is to select one of them, thus selecting their given color. The two pieces that were used to determine player color are then to be returned to their respective places upon the board. Once all of that has been done, the capture phase is to begin, which sees the player controlling the dark-colored pieces, always going first with play, alternating between the players where each player is to perform their move in the form of a capture. This continues until the game comes to an end. Once that is done, one piece of each color is to be removed from the center of the board. This starts off with the player controlling the dark-colored pieces, removing one of their pieces from one of the 4 center squares. When that is completed, the player controlling the light-colored pieces is to remove one of their pieces from the board that is adjacent to the now empty square. This will cause 2 empty spaces to be found next to each other upon the board. During our research, we came across some variants to this rule. First is that the player controlling the dark-colored pieces is to remove one of their pieces from a square that is near to the 4 squares found at the center of the board, with the player controlling the light-colored pieces removing one of their adjacent pieces. So instead of removing one of the 4 pieces found in the center of the board, the controller of the dark-colored pieces is to remove one of their pieces from the ring of squares circling the innermost squares. When it comes to that of the controller of the light-colored pieces, their rule of removing a piece remains unchanged. Second is that the player controlling the dark-colored pieces removes one of their pieces from a square found at one of the four corners of the board, with the player controlling the light-colored pieces removing one of their adjacent pieces. And third is that the player controlling the dark-colored pieces removes one of their pieces from anywhere upon the board, with the player controlling the light-colored pieces doing the same, which can be an adjacent piece or a non-adjacent piece. With the nature of Konane, all moves are classified as capturing moves, thus making capturing mandatory. On their turn, the player is to take one of their pieces and have it jump either vertically or horizontally over a single opponent piece, thus removing it from the game. With that said, pieces are unable to perform a jump diagonally, jump over an empty square, jump off of the board, or to perform a non-jumping move. When jumping, a player's piece can only jump over an opposing piece found adjacent to it, with an empty space found immediately beyond the opposing piece. When performing a move, only one piece is able to be used to perform a jump, as well as only to be done in a single direction during any given turn. With this jumping behavior, players are to alternate turns. Once a player has performed their move, and there is the possibility that additional moves can be made with the same piece, then said player has the option of continuing the capturing process. So, as long as the captures are sequential in nature and move in the same direction, said player can perform multiple captures. But with that said player doesn't have to continue capturing, especially if they think it's going to be disadvantageous for them to do so. With that said, when a multi-jump sequence is available, said player will have to capture at least a single enemy piece during their given turn. As the game progresses and pieces are captured, there are going to be fewer and fewer of them remaining upon the board, thus reducing the chances of the players being able to make a move. The game will end when a player no longer has a legal move to make on their turn, with said player being declared the loser, and the player who performed the last capture being deemed the winner, thus making the number of pieces a player has captured during the game irrelevant. And due to this fact, the game will never end in a draw. Accompanying everything that has been addressed, there are a few variants that we'd like to take a look at. The first variant of the game will only allow a single capture to be performed during any given turn, even if multiple captures are available. The second variant has the player, after performing a capture on their turn and another capture is available but for another piece, then they can perform said capture, continuing to do so if they so desire, until there are no other opposing pieces left to capture. And the third variant sees the player who has no more moves to make being deemed the winner. So basically speaking, think of this as a reversal of typical play, as well as requiring some additional strategization on the part of the players. So with that said, that is what you need to know about Konane. With that taken care of, we can start talking about Kolowis Awithlak Nanai. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode and happy gaming.